It's just 16 days to go now until the first race of the 2012 Formula One season in Melbourne, and the team's testing for the third and final time before that race. They're at Barcelona's circuit de Catalunya. Our reporter Rachel Brooks is there for us. Rachel, how are the teams doing on this second morning of testing?
Well, Hayley, they've got over that late start this morning, just delayed by half an hour or so because there's some fog here in Barcelona, but they've been out ever since. There have been a few red flags, though, already this morning, and I'm joined by Ted Kravitz now from Sky Sports F1 HD. And Ted, what have you made of the morning so far?
Well, it's been not much action and a lot of stoppages, as you say. We've had 2 stoppages for Michael Schumacher, the first with a small electrical failure, the second with an unspecified technical fault, whatever that is, but that's slightly concerning for Mercedes, and one for Williams as well, Pastor Maldonado, only doing 2 laps before his car broke down on track, and he's going to be out soon. They're practicing pit stops. But at the moment, I've just come in from the pit lane. Fernando Alonso fastest in his Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton also doing short runs. He's not so happy. He's down in 6th at the moment in the times.
And the other teams as well, we had a look. Red Bull have been going out for short runs as well, with Vettel at the wheel today.
Yeah, Red Bull have been practicing pit stops in the morning, and then they're going to do some more performance runs in the afternoon. Ferrari also have a race distance planned with Fernando Alonso later on this afternoon when the track temperatures are more representative. But we're still waiting to see some of these new developments come onto the car. It looks like McLaren, we're only going to see their new wings, new front wings, new rear wings, new bodywork coming on for the second and third and fourth final days tomorrow and the next day.
We had some news from Williams this morning concerning Sir Frank Williams. Can you expand on it for us?
Yeah, the news is that Sir Frank Williams has stepped down as a board member of the Williams Grand Prix team. He remains team principal. He remains nominally in charge of the team, but it's significant, really. The Williams family will now be represented by his daughter Claire Williams, who's stepped up as Director of Communications and Marketing. But it's significant in that this is a gradual phasing out of Frank Williams' direct involvement in the team. He's already said earlier this week that he's handing over day-to-day responsibility to Adam Parr, who is the team's current CEO. And I think this is Frank Williams shifting gradually away from controlling the team that he founded some 30 or 40 years ago.
Well, we've been talking to Williams. They are planning to practice pit stops today, as you mentioned, apart from the fault on the track earlier. But pit stops in general is the order of the day today, isn't it?
Yes, it seems that before the final 2 days, the teams they all have their race teams here. All the mechanics who will be doing all the pit stops in Melbourne when we go on March the 18th, they have them here and they're practicing that. They want to get that out of the way before they practice on trying making the car go faster for the final 2 days. So what we've seen on McLaren is particularly interesting. They've traditionally used the lollipop to control their pit stops, but now they've come up with quite a complicated system of red and green lights. And there's a red light according to each corner of the car and the front jackman and the rear jackman. As soon as those red lights turn to green, then the driver, in this case Lewis Hamilton, who's been practicing this morning, can finally get going. It's a different system for McLaren. It can go wrong, as we've seen with other teams in the past, but they're doing it because it takes away the reaction time of the lollipop man. And it's nominally quicker, but it's something that McLaren wants to make sure they've got absolutely right before they debut it in a race.
We've been in the pit lane this morning. There are fewer lollipop men than ever. Is this the end of them?
Well, it's difficult to say because the jury's still out in a sense, because you've got the 2 quickest teams last year in the pit stops were Mercedes and Red Bull. Mercedes used the traffic light pit stop system, Red Bull used the old lollipop. So it's really difficult to say which one is quicker. I think for safety's sake and make sure that there are no accidents or incidents in the pits, having the human element of a man with a lollipop there is a safer way to go. But these teams are all about shaving tenths off their pit stops, and the traffic lights do seem to make sure that the pit stops are actually maybe 2/10 or 3/10 of a second, the average human reaction time, quicker than having a lollipop.
All right, well, we'll watch the rest of the pit stops this morning with interest before the lunch break, and then the team's expected to go out and do long runs, some race simulations this afternoon where they'll try and get around 70 laps on the track. But do join us later and we'll update you then.
F1 testing continues at Barcelona today. It is the third and final pre-season test before we get underway with the Australian Grand Prix in just 16 days' time. So let's cross to the Circuit de Catalunya and join Rachel Brooks, who's with Martin Brundle.
Yes, well, we've actually come out onto the circuit now. We're at the exit of the pit lane here at the Circuit de Catalunya in Barcelona, and I'm very pleased to say Martin Brundle's joined me to talk me through this. Martin, 2.5 days to go, and those teams have to be ready to be on the grid in Melbourne. it's a very crucial time.
Well, they've got to set their cars up and understand how they work, and they're looking for reliability, of course. They need to finish the Grand Prix to get some points. But now we're starting to see some of the process of the weekend, some housekeeping going on as well. You can see down the right-hand side of the pit lane there, lots of black marks from tyre rubber where they do numerous practice starts. Every time they come out of the pits, basically, they'll be stopping there, doing a bite point find on the clutch to set that system up. And whatever new system they've got, the double clutch or however they get their cars away, out onto the racetrack. We've seen lots of pit stop practice as well, haven't we, through this morning, as the teams get their new systems or try to really fine-tune their pit stops.
But we've also seen a lot of red flags, a lot today. These are the upgrades they're bringing. They're trying things out. Things aren't working. Is that the situation we're at?
Well, Formula One car's a living prototype, and that goes for the whole season, not just for testing. And so you're all, a team might build 5 cars in total in a whole year. And so whenever you step over the side of a Formula One car, you're a test driver in the extreme, and they break down. There'll be pieces on that fail, the electronics or something in the engine. We saw Michael Schumacher have a very weird one on the outside of turn 5. Looks like the engine was pushing on or something, because you couldn't really go off there if you tried as a driver making a mistake. But this is where they want the cars to break down. If they can find a weakness, they'll be pushing them hard around here and not changing parts to see how long, what their life is. What they also need to do is a run-out test on their brand new fuel tanks to see, will it pick up the last dregs of the fuel tank. So sometimes towards the end of a morning session, they will go out and intentionally run out of fuel, which will cause a red flag, of course.
Yes, we saw some of that yesterday, in fact, as well. But we're here at the start-finish straight now, and this particular track, obviously the Grand Prix is here in May, but what will this track in particular show the teams? What will they learn from this track?
Well, it's a track very dependent on temperature, and you go much slower often when you come back here for the Grand Prix, because it gives up, especially early in the morning, the track gives more grip, you've got cool air. So the lap times, in comparison to what they'll do here in the race, are completely irrelevant. But what's good about Barcelona is it's got very long corners. And so a car, you can chase a car and you can sort of manhandle a car through a shorter corner at high speed. But the long corners really test the aerodynamics and the stability of those aerodynamics and the downforce of the car and the suspension setup. So it's a good track in that respect. And it's very punishing on the tyres.
Well, just finally, if we can finish off with the timers from this morning, Verne and Toro Rosso has topped the times at the end of the day. Anything you've seen today that surprised you? I mean, we've seen those Hamilton down in 6th, but we don't know what McLaren are trying at the moment, or whether or not it doesn't look like they've got all their upgrades here yet.
I haven't really seen too much that surprised me at all, other than when you get out on the track and just see how some of the drivers are fighting. You have to be careful they're not on a very used set of tyres. And I've been in the paddock most of the morning, and for sure, the teams don't know where they're all at. They're really confused. They know it's close. And you say, yeah, but you've got the sound analysis, you've got the 200-metre loop data, you can tell us. And they said, well, the margin of error on those sort of calculations, it's so close, we don't really know. So I've just been in the paddock more. I'm more interested in talking to the teams and understanding how they're, because they won't forget what they learned last year on the gases coming out of the exhaust, and they're still trying to, as much as they can under the new regulations, test those new systems out, and are they working, and have they got fundamental reliability? Where do they think they are in the pack? I think that's far more important than a list of... You've got to remember, it's just a snapshot of one fast lap. It doesn't tell you the story of the long runs.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us. We do have to get off the track because they will be underway again shortly for the afternoon session, day 2 of the final winter testing session here in Barcelona. Join us later for more.
The second day of the final pre-season testing session in Barcelona has seen Lotus post the fastest time again. Let's join Rachel Brooks, who's been in the pit lane for us today.
Well, at the end of day 2 of this final winter testing session, it's the Lotus and Romain Grosjean who's top of the lap times, and they managed to complete 124 laps today at the Circuit de Catalunya. But it's the Red Bull everyone is talking about. We heard that Red Bull possibly having parts flown in tonight to go on the car tomorrow for Mark Webber, and on Sunday for Sebastian Vettel to complete his final day of testing. So we put the question to Sebastian Vettel after he'd been out in the car today and asked him about the parts that were being flown in tonight.
I think it's normal, the last couple of days of testing, you always bring some bits on the car, so the car is close to what you raced at the first race. So do we. I think other people do as well. But still, it's a bit difficult to judge whether you're really quick or or not, because people play around with a few loads, with the tyres. The time of day makes a big difference as well. So it's hard to really judge, and I think we know more, and finally we know more than now in Australia.
Sebastian, will we be able to see the different parts that you're going to be putting on before Sunday? Will we be able to tell the difference from watching?
I don't know. I haven't seen them, so we'll see. We'll see when they get on the car. If I see a difference, and if you see a difference.
So that's what Sebastian Vettel said. He said he'll see if the car looks different. We'll see if the car looks different. Well, I'm joined by Ted Kravitz now from Sky Sports F1 HD. Ted, we're expecting to see a different car, aren't we?
We are. It's not only parts, it's a whole new car that's being flown out from the Red Bull factory in Milton Keynes. So for all these mechanics in this garage, that's the end of work with this particular chassis. This will be chassis number 1. And rather than fit all the new parts to chassis number 2 overnight, which will involve a lot more work for these guys, they've decided to fly out the new car. Now that's needed some of the agreement from some of the other teams. What it's going to mean is that we're expecting to see significantly different car when it rolls out at 9 o'clock. So this test is about to get much more interesting. Ominously for everybody else, Red Bull bringing more performance to this car, which has already, we think over the long runs, been the fastest here in testing in Barcelona, even though Romain Grosjean has topped the times with what would have been a low fuel run. But as they fire up the engine behind us, it's an ominous sign for McLaren, who are just adding piece by piece to their car here at Barcelona.
And you mentioned McLaren. We're still waiting for them to bring out new parts. Everyone has been sandbagging as we expected. What else can we expect to see from the final 2 days?
Well, maybe if we just move away from this engine that's revving up behind us, I think what we can expect to see is maybe some of these improvements that come to the Red Bull. They'll start bringing much better lap times, and that will be a bit of a shame as far as McLaren are concerned, because they've been working very slowly on these upgrades that they've got for Barcelona. They'll bring a new front wing, a new rear wing, and we'll really see then where everybody stands. Ferrari as well have been bringing more performance to their car. They tested a new front wing on their last run this afternoon, but they've already brought new exhausts. But for Ferrari to be bringing a new exhaust layout at this point, with only 2 testing days to go, is a little bit late in the game. So I think when we get to Australia, we're going to see Red Bull possibly first, McLaren probably second. I think Lotus are looking like they're the third fastest team at the moment, then Mercedes, and then potentially Ferrari, only the 5th fastest as we go into Melbourne.
Ted, thank you very much. We're not going to try and fight the noise any longer here in the pit lane at the Circuit de Catalunya, but we will be back here tomorrow to see just what Red Bull and McLaren and Ferrari and the other teams bring to their cars for the final 2 days, with just over 2 weeks to go until Melbourne.
Lotus continued to impress on day 2 of the final pre-season test session, with Romain Grosjean setting the fastest time in Barcelona for the 2nd consecutive day. The start of the day's session was delayed by fog, but once the cars did get on track, Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel was only able to set the 3rd fastest time, so the team is sending out an upgraded car for tomorrow.
I think it's normal, the last couple of days of testing, you always bring some bits on the car, so the car is close to what you raced at the first race. So do we. I think other people do as well. But still, it's a bit difficult to judge whether you're really quick or not, because people play around with a few loads, with the tyres. The time of day makes a big difference as well. So it's hard to really judge, and I think we know more, and finally we know more than now in Australia.
Vettel's best time was 3/4 of a second slower than Romain Grosjean's, who's followed up yesterday's quickest time with another today. Lewis Hamilton was a further 8/10 slower, with McLaren spending time perfecting a new pit stop technique.
What we've seen on McLaren is particularly interesting. They've traditionally used the lollipop to control their pit stops, but now they've come up with quite a complicated system of red and green lights. And there's a red light according to each corner of the car and the front jackman and the rear jackman. As soon as those red lights turn to green, then the driver, in this case Lewis Hamilton, who's been practicing this morning, can finally get going. It's a different system for McLaren. It can go wrong, as we've seen with other teams in the past, but they're doing it because it takes away the reaction time of the lollipop man.
Well, now to the...
World champions Red Bull are stepping up their preparations for the new Formula One season by flying out a new car for the final 2 days of testing in Barcelona. Sebastian Vettel only managed the third fastest time today as Lotus's Romain Grosjean again set the pace. Lewis Hamilton ended the day only sixth fastest as McLaren spent time working on a new traffic light system to speed up their pit stops. The first practice session of the Australian Grand Prix is live on Friday, March the 16th from 1 a.m. and you can see it on Sky Sports Formula One HD. Qualifying is live from 5 a.m. the following day on the same dedicated channel, and on Sunday, March the 18th, the racing begins. Coverage live on Sky Sports Formula One HD from 4:30 in the morning.
There you go. World champions Red Bull are stepping up their preparations for the new Formula One season by flying a new car out for the final 2 days of testing in Barcelona. The start of the day's session was delayed by fog, but once the cars did get on the track, Red Bull's Sebastian Vettel was only able to set the third fastest time, so the team are sending out an upgraded car for tomorrow.
It's normal, the last couple of days of testing, you always bring some bits on the car so the car is close to what you race at the first race. So do we. I think other people do as well. But still, it's a bit difficult to judge whether you're really quick or not, because people play around with a few loads, with the tires. The time of day makes a big difference as well. So it's hard to really judge. And I think we know more, and finally we know more than now in Australia.
It's not only parts, it's a whole new car that's being flown out from the Red Bull factory in Milton Keynes. So for all these mechanics in this garage, that's the end of work with this particular chassis. This will be chassis number 1. And rather than fit all the new parts to chassis number 2 overnight, which will involve a lot more work for these guys, they've decided to fly out the new car. Now that's needed some of the agreement from some of the other teams. But what it's going to mean is that we're expecting to see significantly different car when it rolls out at 9 o'clock. So this test is about to get much more interesting. Ominously for everybody else, Red Bull bringing more performance to this car, which has already, we think over the long runs, been the fastest here in testing in Barcelona.
Vettel's best time was 0.7 of a second slower than the best of the day set by Lotus's Romain Grosjean.